Hello. Hey everyone. Glad you could make it out tonight. I hope you're as excited as I am to hear from Stacy. I'm one of the coordinators for the Leadership Speakers Series, along with fellow senior Leah Hume. I think something all of us can agree on is that we can become better leaders in our daily lives and in the world. And I think the What is Leadership Speaker Series is not here to tell you to be a better leader, but promote thoughts and questions that garner insights on various aspects of leadership. I know this valley is filled with amazing leaders because I graciously get to interact and speak with them every day, and my hopes in having Stacy, along with the other leaders that we have coming this semester, is to prompt personal growth and development in the leaders within us all. With that being said, along with Stacy for the semester, we have a few more speakers that I just want to give you a heads up on. First, we have Jake Norton, who is a team member on the expedition that discovered George Mallory's body on Everest. He's also a National Geographic photographer. He co-wrote and directed High and Hollowed award-winning film, which will be showing just down the hallway in our cinema on March 1st, and then the next day, on March 2nd, he will be speaking with us in the Taylor Auditorium. We also have Lynn Hill, the rock climbing legend and Patagonia rock climbing ambassador, who's going to share with us her secrets to leadership and what qualities are needed to find the natural harmony within ourselves and the world we live in. And then, fingers crossed, just a teaser, we are in the process of getting the funds together to have Erin Kenny, who is the co-founder of Cedar Song Nature School, and whose mission is to connect children with nature. We've been very lucky to have support from all the contributors that allowed us to have Stacy here tonight. I just wanted to give them a shout out. Wilderness Pursuits, School of Business, the Psychology Department, Student Affairs, the Registrar's Office, the Honors Program, the Center for Environment and Sustainability, the Recreation Outdoor Education Program, Exercise and Sports Science Department, and a special thanks to Brooke Moran, who was a huge part in making this Leadership Speakers series happen. With that being said, if you'd like to become a member and share your support, we have a few different possibilities in doing so. First of all, any input, suggestions on speakers you want to see, come to Western in the Valley and talk to us and share all the information. Let us know, let me, Brooke, or Leah know, and we're trying to get all and any speakers from all kinds of different walks of life in here to talk to you guys. Any donations will help defray some of the costs that it costs to put on the Leadership Speaker Series, and we now have a partnership program for businesses looking to contribute, which is going to be a huge deal. And if you have any questions, me, Brooke, and Leah are going to have a table set up outside that we can answer any of those questions. Thanks for coming out again tonight, and keep doing the snow dances, because they seem to be working. I'm now going to introduce Brooke Moran, who's going to tell us a little bit about Stacy.
Thank you, Annie and Leah. They have been working like mad. This is part of their senior capstone project. And I said those projects should take about 50 to 60 hours. I'm fairly certain they have fulfilled those already this semester, but don't leave me yet. And also Terry Stinson, who's not here tonight, but is an administration in recreation and exercise and sports science. She is the goddess of logistics for this series. So when you see her, please thank her, bring her chocolate, love her, hug her, everything. Good evening. Does anyone know of one of the biggest and most powerful, effective hospitals in the world? This is the audience participation part.
St. Jude's Research.
St. Jude's, awesome. Any other ideas? Mayo, Shriners, I think that goes without saying, yeah. So last semester, Stacy was kind enough to Skype with my capstone students, and he told them that the outdoors is it is the largest and perhaps most powerful hospitals you can encounter. So the following are just some of the groups served by the outdoors, whether therapeutically for preventative health, so physical fitness, stress reduction, mental health, leadership development, and so on. So these are just some of the groups. People with mental and physical disabilities, children with attention deficit challenges, at-risk and adjudicated youth, incarcerated and executive populations, sometimes the same, NASA space shuttle teams for the last 10 plus years have all done an outdoor leadership course to help them prepare for time and space, and many, many others. My guess is, for you being in this room and in this valley, probably the outdoors has benefits for all of you as well. So Stacy capitalizes on this power of the outdoors to serve diverse populations through his work as the director of Sierra Club's Mission Outdoors. After leaving the military with a Bronze Star, he'll tell you that rock climbing saved his life. He passionately pays it forward, and his impact was and is so profound that National Geographic last year named him as an Explorer of the Year. The North Face asked him to be one of their athletes. He writes regularly for the Huffington Post and has a million other things going on. He doesn't sleep. Just for fun this morning, he drove over from Salt Lake City in the storm. Anyway, you're going to find, I hope that you will find, I have no doubt that you'll find, his humility, humor, vision, and tenacity are just a few of the driving forces that allow him to have successes and to have other people around him have successes. So please help me welcome Stacy Bare.
Some of you may be really disappointed when you heard that Stacy Bare was speaking to see me. But you can thank my parents for that if you ever get the chance. So, for those of you who don't get that joke, it's because Stacy is oftentimes a woman's name. And I am not a woman. Though the United States Army continues to ask me the Veterans Administration asks me for a pap smear almost annually, which is a challenge. And about 2 years ago, I finally realized that is probably why my packet to get accepted into Special Operations, Special Forces Qualification course was never actually accepted. So, but fair enough, the military also thought I was married to my brother, and since my father's from West Virginia, that's not all that weird, but. I also didn't know, is there weird feedback for you guys? It sounds really tinny to me. Maybe I'll just use the microphone. So that it's not too tinny. Oh.
He's too tall to see it. I see it easily.
Is that better?
No.
No. It is on. It says it's on. Is that? Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me in the back? Is that okay? Okay. We'll do this without a microphone now, if that's all right. I don't know if that's going to mess up the recording, which I'll mess up anyway. So, good evening. It's really great to be here. Years ago, I met Paul Tame at an airport, and there's this thing between veterans, I think, where there's this weird magnet, and you end up sitting next to veterans in really weird spaces, and then having a conversation about life and larger things. And that's absolutely how I met Paul Tame. And he said, well, I'm not really a veteran of your wars, I'm a veteran from Australia. And I said, well, war's war and warriors are warriors, right? And I guess in many ways that's why I'm here from that 4 or 5 years ago. And when I listen to the other people that are coming to talk at Western State, Colorado University, I'm really humbled to be in that crowd. When Lynn's here, I still have a huge crush on Lynn Hill. I will always have a huge crush on Lynn Hill. It's awkward when we're in the same room together because I just stare at her and she's like this big. And so about 5 years ago, the first time I met her, I couldn't say anything. She said, are you okay? And I said, you're Lynn Hill. She said, are you okay? And I just said, you're Lynn Hill. And she just turned and walked away. And I was just staring right where she was. But so yeah, so Lynn's gonna be here. It's probably good I won't be. But I am really thankful to you all, to the Mountaineer community, to Brooke Moran for bringing me out here. And it's always great to get back to Colorado. I really credit Colorado for putting me on the life path that I'm on now. I don't know how you all feel about the Front Range, but I used to live in Boulder, Colorado. And that's kind of where I got reintroduced to the full and total power of the outdoors to change lives. I also met my wife there, and just as soon as we could, we left the Front Range and ultimately headed west. We weren't able to stop in Gunnison. My wife's a professor, and she got hired by Utah Valley University. So we slid a little bit further west, but you never know. If a position opens up here at Western, both of us would love to come out to a community like Gunnison at some point. I do have the privilege to be a brand ambassador for the North Face. I'm probably the world's worst sponsored athlete. I'm also sponsored by Keen Shoes because the North Face only goes up to a size 13 for the most part. So sometimes being really big has its privileges. I'm also the director, like Brooke said, of Sierra Club Outdoors. We get out 250,000. This last year we got out 265,000 people through a volunteer-driven outings program. I have 6 staff. We have 5,000 volunteer leaders, and so it's a pretty intense process of trying to manage that. And saying that I'm the director of a program with only 6 staff and 5,000 volunteer leaders is, I think, a pretty funny statement, but it is my job to try and set a vision and try and create opportunities for people to succeed. The club's motto, for those of you that don't know, is to explore, enjoy, and protect. And we feel like at Sierra Club Outdoors, or Mission Outdoors, that we do a pretty damn good job with the first 2 words of our motto. And I think most of you all here are also out here exploring and enjoying, and hopefully, if you're not already working on protection, you will work on land protection, and hopefully you'll begin to see the parallel that as you begin to explore and enjoy and ultimately protect landscapes, you're doing the same thing with your own minds and your own communities as well. It's not just a physical lesson when you go outside. I think it's oftentimes a very mental one. And what's really key to that, right, is that if you don't love a place, you'll never fight for it. And you're really never going to love what you don't first see or at the very least feel. And for me, I think that's the first lesson in leadership that I'd like to throw out tonight, is that you've got to really love where it is you're headed in life. Or at least you've got to love your team. And you've got to enjoy at some level what it is that you're doing if you're going to be fully effective. And I think we get caught up a lot of times in what it means to enjoy something. How many of you here know about the different types of fun, right? Type 1 fun, it's like a lot of laughter, it's great. Type 2 fun, you realize you're probably going to enjoy it later, but not in the moment. Type 3 fun, years from now you're going to look back and go, that was a good time. And type 4 fun is not fun at all, it's just going to suck. And I think a lot of times when we talk about, I'm going to do something that I enjoy, we get caught up in making sure it's always type 1 fun. And I think that's really detrimental to our broader society and to who we are. Because you've got to work and you've got to be willing to make sacrifices. And that's all easier if you know where you're going and if you love the people that are around you. So as an example of that, I love the Ski Mountains. I love northern British Columbia. And I've never actually been there. Well, look at that. I can feel their pull, and I have friends who make their livelihood in the ski-nets, and right now they're trying to develop the ski-nets for oil and natural gas development. And when I look at that, and when I hear my friends talk about the ski-nets, I can imagine myself next to these mountains. I can feel how small I am, and I can feel how little the human spirit really and truly is, and I know how wonderful that can make me feel. And I think about my home range right now, which is the Wasatch Mountains outside of Salt Lake City. And I try to imagine what it would be like to move from the top of Flagstaff Mountain to the top of that mountain to try and ski down. And I know someday that I'm going to be there. And I know that when somebody threatens my Wasatch Mountains, I get upset. In the same way that when somebody threatens the Skeena Mountains, I get upset. But for you all here, you've probably felt and seen the mountains and been felt and seen by the mountains right around here. And that's hopefully what you love. And so if somebody were to threaten those mountains, you'd be willing to fight for it. And that's what we mean when we say explore, enjoy, and protect in the Sierra Club. So, in that same vein, I joined the Army in 1996. I went to the Reserve Officer Training Corps at the University of Mississippi, or Ole Miss. My dad actually had to sign the paperwork and fax it back in to the Ole Miss office as I listened on the phone and swore my contract oath because I wasn't old enough to join the military on my own. It was a heady time for my family and for me. I came from a long military family, and it was a call to service that I had felt, or at least thought I had felt, from a very, very young age. I was, in a sense, chasing a dream. When I came home from Iraq, however, in 2007, which is now about 8 years ago, I didn't have much of a feeling for anything. I didn't feel much about loving anybody or anyone. The only thing that was left was my love for the troops. And at the end of the day, you could say that I really loved what I got to do in Iraq on a daily basis. Even though every day somebody was trying to kill me, I still loved that job because I loved my team. But ultimately, when I separated the mechanics of what I was doing for the reason I was doing it, or somebody else was having me do it, it was no longer congruous. There was a lot of dissonance, and so I left. And when I came home, I really tried hard to feel. But I couldn't bring myself to much of any emotion. I couldn't connect with people. I didn't feel like I had any community. But it was eventually out on the land that I realized I had fought for. Or at the very least, in 1996, that I had notionally signed up to defend our country. And when I realized it was that country, the actual soil, the dirt, the sand, and not a political agenda, not even a single person, but the actual land, I began to feel it again. And I began to feel like there was some sort of purpose or something that I could promote, something that I could move towards in my own life. And that, for better or worse, happened in Boulder, Colorado. It's a strange little town on the Front Range, may have been before, but it's the epicenter of that early experience that flung me off on my path. And it's a journey that I really can't believe I'm on. It's a journey as I'm driving from Salt Lake City to Gunnison, Colorado today to talk to you all. Never would have thought that this would ever happen when I started out 5 years ago. And hearing the other people that are coming here and knowing Brooke and knowing who you all are and what you all are doing, that you're taking your time, whether or not you're required to be here from class or not, you're actually taking your time to sit and listen. And I will honestly say this is the first time I've looked out in a group of people and not seen anybody using any sort of technology, which is mind-blowing in this day and age. So thank you for that respect. That's incredible. It's also in the middle of one of the best storms of the year. And so I'm sure most of you would rather be waxing your skis or getting ready to head out or thinking about whatever dawn patrol is there. So I'm not going to talk all that long tonight, so you should be able to get home, get some sleep, get up early and get out there. I don't know what the facets are looking like at this point, but I'm going to try and talk a little bit about humility, decision-making, leadership, and do it in a time frame that doesn't put anybody to sleep tonight. But where I want to start is with the notion of dreams. How many of you were told when you were growing up to follow your dreams? So I think that's wrong. I think we have a problem in this country when we talk about dreams, and we insist on telling young people all the time, follow your dreams. Because I don't actually think that's always a good idea. I'm not saying it can't be a good idea. I'm just saying most of the time I don't believe it is a good idea, because what you end up dreaming about and the decisions you end up making to follow your dreams, and whether or not you're going to follow those dreams, it's one of the most important decisions you're ever going to make in your entire life. And I don't think we analyze it enough. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, hated the notion of dreams. He thought that they played too little to what actually happened in our lives. He thought it played too little and trivialized what happens when men and women set about achieving a vision for their own lives. And he was angry that it was something that we did when we were asleep, and not when we were awake. Now, I don't necessarily agree with Steve Jobs, and I also don't necessarily agree with Brooke when she said she doesn't sleep. I kind of think my spirit animal is a koala bear, which sleeps 20 hours a day. The closer I can get to that level, if I'm not skiing or climbing, the better for me. But I do see where Mr. Jobs is coming from. And before you think that I'm here to crush your dreams, I'm not. I think dreams can be powerful. I think they can be good. But I do think we have a problem starting with the notion of following your dreams. And I think in general, the problem comes from this notion that, one, nobody ever talks about failing when you achieve your dreams. So if you achieve your dream and you realize that it really sucks now that you're there, nobody talks about what to do afterwards. Nobody talks about what happens if, after you climb to the summit, what do you do next? And the other thing is, and I can see it already on some of your faces, you're wondering why I'm criticizing something so wonderful as dreams. And I feel like we're in this place in our country where we're not allowed to criticize anything if it has any goodness in it, right? People get upset if you look at things critically now. Well, why do you hate dreams? Or why do you hate America? I don't hate America, I don't hate dreams, I just want to look at some of the issues I see there. In the same way that if your car is making a clacking noise and your car does a good thing, you're not gonna not go into the mechanic because you love your car so much, right? You're gonna figure out, hopefully, maybe not, I don't know how many dirtbags are in here, but hopefully you're gonna go figure out what it is wrong with your car so that it can get you to where you wanna go faster and safer. And in that, we've got to open our minds up to criticism. We've got to welcome criticism. And I think that's something that's also really, really difficult when we think about being humble as well. It's opening ourselves up to criticism. And I realize this is a little bit of a sidebar. I had not intended to spend that much time there. But anyway, I think a lot of you here might be here because you really want to be here. And some of you in college are here because you're following a prescription that somebody else laid out for you. A vision or a dream that somebody else had. Your parents, your guidance counselor, your coaches, your teachers, your friends, your fellow soldiers and sailors who told you that to do anything in life, you had to be in college first. Or maybe you just ended up here and you can't tell anyone why it is that you stopped the car or the bus and got out in Gunnison, Colorado in the first place. Maybe you're just drifting through. Or maybe you stayed here for so long at this point because there is no better life than to be this close to Crested Butte and to qualify for a student ski pass. I don't know. And none of that is actually a bad thing. It could even be a good thing from time to time to let yourself drift, to let yourself be swayed by other people's thoughts and dreams for your own life. But what matters, no matter how you got here, what matters now that you are here isn't what you dream, it's what you do. It's what you do with your hands and your feet and your ears. What you say, what I say, is actually really of pretty secondary importance. Pontification has never beaten out action. Ever. So, I tell you that maybe following your dreams, even when they do come, sure it's the right thing, but maybe it's not. Because maybe your dreams are wrong. Maybe you're dreaming the wrong dreams. And I feel like I can say that because I've experienced those wrong dreams. I've felt it when my dreams have failed to live up to expectations. Before I came home from Iraq, as I was dealing with this idea of a failed dream of what it meant to be an officer in the United States Army, to serve my country, I found myself in Iraq dreaming about a life of what it would look like when I came home to this country. And I actually chose that dream from a fairly long, but relatively acceptable list of dreams that culture hands out for us. Dreams like being a doctor, a lawyer, a professor, a teacher, a sales executive. None of those are bad dreams. None of those are bad careers. Some have a lot of acceptance and prestige, and certainly have a lot of cultural understanding. Because the thing is, no one has ever actually encouraged you, for the most part probably, to be something like a flung duckowitz, right? Has anybody ever said that to you? No, they haven't. Because nobody knows what a flung duckowitz is. And as a species, we're pretty afraid of the unknown. And we think if we know something, that's going to be better than what we don't know. And so what ends up happening is our friends and our family try and help us to manufacture safe, relatively predictable dreams and achievable dreams. And that's what it was like when I came home from the Army. And like I said, that had been my dream since high school, to lead men in combat. But when that dream didn't live up to it, I set out to follow another dream, a dream about safety, a dream about not getting shot at, a dream about a graduate education that would lead me to a professional job, an exposed brick apartment in an American city with trendy glasses and a comfortable upper middle class lifestyle with maybe a week vacation every year at a place like Crested Butte. That was my dream. And I tried to follow that dream.
I followed it with rigid precision and long hours of work, but it was hard because I wasn't recognizing that I wasn't really capable of accomplishing that kind of dream. There was a need inside of me and a voice inside of me that said, if you become that upper middle class voter, are you going to become the same person that sent you to war? And I didn't find that to be acceptable either. But more afraid of not achieving that dream, I was afraid of continuing to live a nightmare. And I was afraid that ultimately that nightmare was going to leave me unemployed and homeless. So I took the first job that was offered to me out of graduate school. I went to graduate school in Philadelphia. And I drove to Boulder, Colorado to take that gig. And it was a pretty miserable job. And as I drove west, I can still see this vision somewhere outside Chicago, where I took the dream of the middle class lifestyle and coming home and being super successful, and I choked it. I choked that dream out in a shallow, oily puddle of stormwater at some rest stop outside Chicago, Illinois. And I remember crying a little bit as that dream thrashed in the water, gurgling out its false promises. And finally, dreamless, and yet again senseless and emotionless, I kept driving west. And I'm not saying everybody has that dream, or everybody's going to have some sort of incident where it's going to be that noticeable that their dream has failed, or that their dream doesn't live up to expectations. But I think more often than not, in this world that we live in, a lot of people live with broken dreams and dreams they've been forced to step aside from. And shortly after I arrived in Colorado, feeling the way I did, I had a feeling that I hope nobody in this room has ever had, and ever will have. And if you do, I want you to know it's okay to have this feeling. But hopefully you never act on it. And that feeling is the notion of a Colt 45 mouthwash, which is what the community that I grew up in the military and the veterans call suicide. And I wanted to say goodbye to a sun that burned me, and a rain that chilled me to the bone, and a community that I could never feel like I could connect with. So I called up a friend, and I told him what I wanted to do. And he said, well, you could do that, but you could come on time. So I figured, I can wait a week to kill myself. I ended up having to wait 3 weeks. It's difficult to order size 15 rock climbing shoes. But I figured I'd wait. And so I got out climbing. And it was a step. It was an action that we took together. And it was in that moment, and it was a pretty long moment, climbing up the first flat iron in Boulder, Colorado, that I felt for the first time in a long time, the pure joy of being in the moment. I wasn't dreaming about anything in the future. I wasn't worried about anything in the past. I was simply experiencing the now as a relatively small man up against a pretty big rock. And when I stood at our summit that day, I felt wonderful. But I also felt really confused and disoriented. When I realized that all the memories of yesterday and all the empty hopes of tomorrow, they weren't with me in that moment when I had topped out. And as I leaned back over the rock to make a short rappel to the ground, my elation turned into fear. It rocked my world. The shame and the guilt exploded through me for not spending the day either working towards my future, the shame and the guilt for not bearing second-by-second witness of the lives of my close friends that I had lost in Baghdad. Shame and guilt because I was outside laughing and smiling, and I had Elvis leg like you wouldn't believe on what's ultimately a 5'5", 5'6" climb. But as that fear erupted out through my body, my buddy Chuck talked me through the rappel. An action I had actually done 100, 1,000 times in the military before, but now it seemed impossible. And ultimately I got my feet under me and I moved down the rock wall and I started walking down the trail. And as I was walking back down that trail, I finally got back to work. It was in that action. It was in that action of feeling the power of being on that rock wall and climbing higher and higher, trusting in someone else to help me get to the top and later back down, and triggered a dream. And it gave me an idea as to where to take my first step when I finally got back into the car and drove home. And that dream That dream was that if getting outdoors for me, getting on the rock and getting vertical was so good for me, it had to be good for others who were in pain like I was in pain. So my dream started out just to get 1 or 2 more veterans high, up on a rock wall, up on a mountaintop. Just 1 or 2 who needed it. And in my own convoluted mind, I thought, people who need it more than I do. Because I was already feeling the necessary humility of leadership, thinking others needed what I had more than I did. I think there's a strange manifestation in our country of missionary zeal that leaves us thinking with this idea that we will only help those who are weaker than us, as if those who are weaker than us can't help ourselves, or that those who are in a position of weakness can't help their own selves to climb higher. But I think the key difference between this dream on the rock and the other 2 dreams I touched on tonight was that my newest dream was a dream born of action and not the other way around. So the dream started to chase me, and I wasn't chasing that dream any longer. It's a little bit of a mind gymnastics thing to think about, but it was the action of being on that rock wall that let me know what I wanted to do next. Not listening to somebody else tell me what my life could be, or reading or taking in other social or cultural cues as to what that was. As a child, my dream was taught to me by movies and books about what it was to be valorous and heroic. So I co-opted those dreams, and ultimately that led me to the Army. And while I was in the Army, it was both one of those things that was the most horrendous and the most fantastic thing I did at the same time. But like I said earlier, when I came home, it was a mess. And nobody ever wants to talk about what happens after you realize the dream you achieved really sucks, or really hurts you, or hurts those around you. And so I think what ends up happening is apathy, or just not starting. When people tell me they've dropped out, or they walked away from something, I sometimes wonder, where was the fortitude? Where was the stick-to-itiveness? But I don't think that's really a fair question to have. Because at least they started, right? At least they began to pursue something. And most of the times when people drop out or walk away, I think all they're really doing is changing course, or taking the time to change the course. I hope people don't drop out just to be apathetic, or quit just because they're afraid of the further actions in front of them. And maybe that happens too. But if it happens because we don't allow people to fail enough, and we don't celebrate failure enough, and we don't talk enough about what happens when life goes bad. We only want to talk about all sorts of smiley faces and emoticons and that crap. It's just not real. So anyway, there I was, walking down a path. A path that gave me a chance to feel and to live life day in and day out. And what I began to learn pretty early on was that when you achieve your dreams, you're rewarded pretty broadly with 4 things. More work, more suffering and sacrifice, more joy, and more dreams. So, I know at least one of you guys in the back plays football, right? Like, it might have been a dream to come play college football. Yeah. And when you achieved that dream and you showed up on campus freshman year, it wasn't like all flowers and roses and pancakes, right? It was a hell of a lot more work than it ever was in high school. I'm assuming. I didn't check to see what kind of season y'all had. But I'm sure it was a good one. The mascot like you guys had, I mean, it's one of the best mascots in America, if you ask me. But more work because once you've tasted success, or even had a good healthy fail in the attempt, you want to keep going. And because you've achieved one dream, the work begins to brew up for the next vision. And that means more work. More suffering and sacrifice, because to get to where you want to go is inevitably going to require some tough decisions, as you focus not on bringing yourself pure joy, not just type 1 fun, but in achieving the goals you've set for yourself. But it's important also in that accomplishment to take some time and celebrate what you've done, and feel deep down the joy of doing something that for you, and for your community perhaps, really matters. And then of course, that cycle starts again, with another dream, born of action. Going back momentarily to that first climb, I didn't know how to put on a harness right. I didn't know how to tie a figure 8 knot. I did not know how to slack line. I did not, and I still do not, know how to look cool doing any of it. And for someone who had commanded troops, even the small teams that I got to lead in combat zones, someone who used to be an explosive ordnance disposal tech in remote parts of Angola, somebody who taught themselves how to speak Portuguese and ultimately Russian in the former Soviet state of Georgia, I thought I was pretty cool. But I was humbled again, trying to figure out how to put on harness. And it forced me to open myself up to the notion that I didn't know everything and that I had to rely on others to get the job done. And that was powerful medicine. It was humiliating and it was exhilarating at the same time. And it forced out that old dream because it was so different. And I was willing to go because someone I knew, someone I trusted, allowed me to be humbled, but not pitied. Allowed me to be humbled, but didn't make fun of me by the mountain. And they brought me along on that experience. And if there's one lesson that I learned from my time at the University of Mississippi in ROTC, it was from my senior tactical non-commissioned officer, a gentleman named Master Sergeant Timothy Lindsay. We got our licks daily. And I should stop at this point and let you know that I grew up in South Dakota. And I went to school in the Deep South, originally to play basketball. And I had a very strong South Dakota accent. Does anybody know what that's like? The Minnesota accent with a long O's. So I was from South Dakota in Mississippi. And I was abused pretty much daily. And I thought that I just needed to show that I could do more, that I could be better. And what Tim Lindsay taught me was that if I take care of my troops, if I take care of those people around me, they're going to take care of me. The point of Army leadership, that I learned anyway, wasn't to show how great you were, but it was to set standards for those beneath you and around you to succeed, and they would push you to the top. So when I got handed my first platoon, my first troop command at the wise old age of 23, my platoon sergeant, a guy named Timothy Paziora, who grew up in Philadelphia, which was one of the main reasons I moved back to Philadelphia after Iraq, sat me down and explained to me what Master Sergeant Lindsay's statement said in practical terms that as a young lieutenant, a recent college graduate, I could understand. He was very short and to the point. He said, be a crap umbrella. Anybody know what a crap umbrella is? It's not an umbrella made out of crap. He said, if you can keep all the crap that's flying around this battalion from hitting the troops will work hard and you'll look good. Don't worry about what they do as much as you worry about keeping the crap off of them. So my job was to try and protect them. There was a little bit more than that. I had to communicate a clear mission and a sense of purpose for what we were doing. But once that was set, my job was relatively simple. Albeit sometimes dirty and dignified, and undignified at times. But I was never to be more than any of my unit or my individual troops. I was never to be set aside or apart from them. I had to be with them. I had to be in the daily grind. I had to be willing to get dirty and show them that I was willing to do what it took so they could do the job for me and for our unit. And I think it's sad because I don't think we live in a world anymore where there are too many leaders, too many people, military or not, willing to hold on to that simple maxim that if you take care of other people, they will take care of you. You know it's a problem. Take a look at the world outside this ballroom door. It's pretty messed up. But when we take a look at the world and we think about all the things that are going wrong, I also don't want anybody to get overwhelmed. I want you to know that you can make a difference. Whether or not you see yourself as a leader now, you're going to have an opportunity to step up to leadership later, or you have earlier in your life. You can make a difference in how you move through the world. You can make a difference in how the people around you move through the world. And so, when you come to a decision point, when you're trying to make a big life change or trying to figure out if you want to do something, I think you can ask yourself 3 questions. Is the mission clear, and do I want to be on it? Because if it's not, you got to head in another direction, right? If you're heading down a path, and maybe you got on this path because you thought it was your dream, and you're following your parents' dream or your brother's dream, and you realize this is not a mission I want, check out. Is there a sense of purpose for what we're doing? And is that filling a need? Is it filling a community need? If not, it's probably not worth your time. And in doing it, are you substantially increasing or decreasing the amount of crap that other people around you are going to have to deal with? It doesn't really matter how much crap you get covered in if it's your choice. It's those people around you and how you treat them that ultimately matters the most. And this is where I think humility really comes in. If you're a proud person, you're never going to allow yourself to be covered in dung and still try to lead. Ultimately, it can be taken too far though, right? I mean, there are plenty of people out there who so cover themselves in the crap of the world and beg the world to take a look at what they do. They so want to tell you about their sacrifice, to see their selfless actions. Please see their selfless actions, and rather than affecting any real leadership, they only affect their own self-martyrdom. Why is that? It has to do, in my mind anyway, with intention. What are you trying to achieve and why? A friend of mine, Scott Strode, set out on his own life to help other folks who were like him, set out in his own life to try and help other folks like him recover from alcohol and drug abuse. So, a little side note, I was a massive cocaine addict, I was a massive alcoholic, and ultimately I decided after I started climbing that it was really difficult to combine continued cocaine and alcohol use with continued vertical rock climbing. Also, climbing equipment is really expensive, and so are drugs, and so I just kind of, had to win those out. So Scott sets up this group in Denver, Colorado, originally. Now it's in Orange County, it's in New Jersey, and it's called Phoenix Multisport, and it's a group of people who get together to create an active community, and try and create community, right? So he sees a need out there, he decides he can help fill that need. And along the way, Scott was given a CNN Hero Award. He gets to meet Anderson Cooper, he gets to meet all these other really cool folks, he's up on television, and so all these people start calling Scott. And it gives him an awesome platform to talk about his work, and it opened up a lot of doors for how he could pursue his mission on a much bigger scale, and that's what he's done. His intention, though, from day one was to help those in need of community, to find that community, and to grow. But this guy calls him up and he says, I want to be like you. Can I come down and talk to you? I want to know what it is to be like you. Scott says, sure, thinking like this guy's a guy who sees a need in his community and wants help. So Scott welcomes the guy into the Phoenix facility, he gives him a tour around, and he says, and today, man, you're going to do participant sign-in. And the guy says, no, I don't want to be the guy who signs people in. I want to be like you. I want to be the leader. I want to be on TV. And Scott said, look, man, then you need to start signing people in. Because the thing is if Scott's intention for all those years that he worked and toiled had been to win an award, he would have been disappointed year after year. Because there was a lot of failure in Scott trying to set up that mission, trying to set up that community. But ultimately, he kept working in the community. He kept helping other people. And once on the peak, as he got lifted up by that community up to the top of the hill, he had a decision on how he wanted to behave. He could bring others up with him, or he could fight to try and stay king of the hill. He chose the former and not the latter. But it is a pretty delicate balance we need to strive for, because we don't want to get into a territory where we don't celebrate or are afraid of celebrating our good achievements. Please celebrate your achievements. Celebrate your day-to-day actions in life. If you went skiing today, celebrate it. Your priorities are straight. You're doing the right thing. Tell your professors next time, you're like, I went to this leadership class and I talked to this guy and we heard him say that it was okay to go ski on a big powder day. Climate change, right? You don't know when the next one's coming. But you see it in all the places where we work, right? In the products we buy, in the organizations we belong to, in the schools we attend. No one's going to buy anything from the North Face if the North Face doesn't tell folks and show folks, and enough folks ultimately believe in the claims of superior style, function, or even corporate ethos, right? Similarly, no one's going to join the Sierra Club, let alone donate to our cause, if we don't tell them about all the great work we do. And we're trying to, one of the big things we do is talk about the health benefits of the outdoors, and we're doing a big campaign right now to raise a bunch of money to do a bunch of biometric research on the power of the outdoors, and we've got to go tell people that what we're doing has never been done before, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. Otherwise, they're not going to help our cause. And it's the same thing with Western, right? You guys are here because somebody came and told you how great Western State really is. So you gotta celebrate that stuff. But when we combine all this together, and as you're sitting there thinking, God, I just want it to end, I just want to leave, I've got work to do, skis to tune, what does it mean in your own lives? This notion of humility. Trying to rethink about how it is you work your dreams into the practice of your daily lives. Are you following your dreams, or are they following you? What does it mean in how you make decisions? Or how you're going to step up or step back when you have the opportunity to be a leader? And in the backdrop of a modern society that highlights more folks like Ryan Williams and Bill O'Reilly, who want us to think that they have done more than they really have, for what? I would say there's some good news for those of you who are already in this room. If you're engaged in outdoor pursuits, you're already used to gutting out a few of those painful, laborious, dare I say, boring slog days to the summit. But before we become too self-congratulatory about those of us in the outdoors, before we take on too much knowing how powerful the outdoors and the time outside makes us more humble, we know that through research. Time outdoors makes us more friendly, improves our pro-social behaviors. In fact, there's a study that shows you're more likely to fall in love outside than in. We have to make sure here in the outdoor world that we're also taking care of our own. And it's not just as easy as an Instagram, Insta-famous, self-sticky on the mountain sort of world anymore. One of the challenges we have in our community in the outdoors is that we're too often looking inside, internally, for leadership to change. In the outdoor community, we've got to begin inviting in new faces and new voices. We can't just go invite people to come outside. We've got to go to where other people are who aren't outside yet to find out what it is they need. And that's not just in the outdoors, right? That's any time we do social change. Too many times we think, well, I've got a great idea, I just need more people to come and be a part of this great idea. Versus going to folks, figuring out what their needs are and how that idea can actually help meet that. And then finally, let's be honest. Why are you even listening to me? What is this strange thing that happens when someone stands up in front of you and asks that you listen for nearly an hour to me talk about the power of humility and leadership? Is it irony, or is it just bad consequence that in part, the way that I get these kinds of opportunities to speak is because I get enough awards and brand sponsorships and write-ups and recognition to be here to convince you that I'm worthy of your time to listen to? It's a question I cannot answer for you. Another question I can't answer for you is how effective of a leader I am. You'd have to go back and talk to my teams and see. You'd have to look at what we've accomplished. And you'd have to go back and look at the teams that I've been privileged to lead and see what those people are now doing. Have I set the conditions for their future success? Have I looked to work myself out of a job? Or have I held them back? I think it all goes back to need and intention. What is it that you need in your own life first? And are you feeling that need? For me, it was a reason not to put a pistol in my mouth. It was a reason to live. It was a reason to forget about the future so much and focus on the now. And then look to see if that need's reflected in your community. Define your community however you want. It could be rock climbers, it could be other skiers, it could be other football players, it could be your gender group, your race group, your sexual group. Define your community. What is it that your community needs? But for me, my community certainly needed a lot of the same things that I needed. A lot of dumb luck, an incessant belief that what I was doing was right despite my many failures, and there were many failures. The first year that I started a nonprofit, I liquidated my insurance and I maxed out my credit cards to try and get it all done. And once it got all done, and I had no money, but we were standing there on top of 9/11 on Long Beach in 2010, all that failure was all behind me and we had nowhere else to go. So we dreamed again, and we said, let's do it again. And we got back to work. And immediately as we got back to work, We had to question our own intentions for why we were doing what we were doing. Why were we trying to climb another mountain? To help others for certain. But we also realized that as we were helping others, we were helping ourselves. And there was nothing wrong with that. As we moved through the world in those early days, we learned there are other veterans, not just from Iraq or Afghanistan. Veterans who had fought in Somalia or fought in the Cold War, who had this need, this vital need to connect over a period of weeks and months in the outdoors, to feel the power of those mountains. And the further I spent in my journey outdoors, I began to realize that my need wasn't the only need out there. That my group, my community, veterans, we weren't the only ones out there that had trauma and that had pain. And all of a sudden, I was questioning my own intention because I felt like maybe I was prioritizing the health of veterans over the health of the rest of the country. And I like to think that there was good reasoning for that. But then I realized maybe there was an opportunity that we could connect the work we were doing with veterans to the broader world, where we realized that trauma isn't just isolated to people who have only fought in war. And so our attention shifted, not just to help our fellow veterans dealing with the challenges of coming home and welcoming them home, but we realized we had a challenge on our pedestal that we could be a lab for other people. If we could prove the point about the power of the outdoors for veterans, we thought maybe the rest of the country would listen. And so it was that we began to look outside our own selves and our own community to seek out not just support or how we could help, but also inspiration, wisdom. And as we have received so much help, we've done our best to give it back, but we have always gotten more from others than we feel we've ever been able to give. So at the end of the day, I don't think anybody has all the answers. If you walk out of here and you're happy with the dreams you're following, keep following those dreams. Just take a look. Do your own internal azimuth check to see where it is. And as a leader, if you're wondering what to do next, I would suggest this. Shut up and listen. Take care of those around you. They'll tell you how to go forward, and we'll find a way. Stay a while. Y'all won't get my Instagram if I don't do that. Real quickly, we just wanted to, if you are a veteran, we wanted to say welcome back. And then we have a little welcome home gifts for folks. If you're a veteran, if you want to stand up or whatever you can get. Water bottle. Or not. All right. Do you guys have questions, comments, thoughts? Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that said they wanted to join the military?
I'd say, why do you want to join the military? It's the same thing when people say, thank you for your service. I say, well, if I have time, I say, well, what part of my service are you thanking me for? I think a lot of people have gratitude, and I appreciate that, but that's why I like to say welcome home as opposed to thanks for your service, because I don't know what you did in your service. And I don't know how people, and some people hate what they did in their service and don't want to be thankful for the tasks that they had to do. Other people feel differently. The military is great. It was the best thing I ever did in my life. It was also the absolute worst thing in my life. I would just take a look around and say, read a lot of news, see what the military is being done, see what's being done in the military, and say, is that what I want to be a part of? And that's a very personal question that you're going to have to answer yourself. But I have resources, reading. I'd say meet other veterans. I'd say talk to other folks about their experience. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Again, it comes down to need and intention. For me.
What was the most challenging part while starting up the nonprofit? And then what did you use to drive you through those challenges?
Whereas with the military, I'd ask people, to think about their need and intention. With nonprofits, I would actually tell people not to start a nonprofit. Because chances are there's somebody else filling that mission already. So I'd say research, do your research.
And there were other organizations I probably could have worked with. The hardest thing is the paperwork, the 501c3 stuff, figuring out the donations, figuring out how you get that, what's the balance for how much money you need to live. Are you doing the nonprofit full time, or is it a hobby nonprofit, right? You know, something that, and that's really the case, I think, for most startups. You need to have another means of income, or an angel investor to get started. So the hardest part was money, and how I got through it the first time was I zeroed out my retirement accounts and I maxed out my credit cards, which again, I wouldn't recommend to anybody, but yeah, and then it was, you know, and then in earlier versions of this talk, I actually talked a lot about, you know, more about some of those specific failures, and you know, I went into it with a co-founder, a guy that is still one of my best friends, but there were times where our friendship is certainly, you know, where we couldn't be in the same room together, where we couldn't look at each other, because the intent, we thought we understood each other's intent, and we didn't, and that created a lot of friction. So I think, you know, making sure you have a really clear mission and purpose, and making sure that you have a really clear, objectifiable way to measure your successes is the hardest part. And if you can do all that stuff, the money will come. And you know, if you're already willing to live in a van, then, and that's kind of what I did when I was doing Veterans Expeditions, I more or less lived in a van. Which, vans are not made, like outdoor gear, nothing's really made for you when you're 6'8". Yeah.
It sounded like climbing and stuff like that came to you later in life, but did you have love for the outdoors growing up?
Yeah, I had love for the North Stars, so it hurts me that you're wearing that Minnesota Wild shirt. But
I'm from Minnesota, so.
right on. Where at?
Just north of Twin Cities.
Nice. Yeah, the Boundary Waters in the wintertime, one of my favorite places in the world. If anybody's never been dog sledding, put it on your to-do list. Go do it. Go get up to the Boundary Waters. Or I think you can dog sled around here too. But go to the Boundary Waters, it's awesome. Yeah, I grew up in eastern South Dakota, and my family camped a lot, so I was able to go back to that, and I knew what that was like. So, like when I came back from Iraq, I kind of knew I needed to separate myself. I played rugby for a really long time, and I used to read a lot of mountaineering literature on road trips when I was playing rugby in Germany, even though I didn't climb. So I kind of had some of those ideas, so I was open to that a little bit more. And I think that can be a really hard thing for some people who don't grow up with the outdoors. So it was easy for me to return to that, which was lucky. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thanks a lot for your time.